And so I'm interested in your take on this topic, especially because typically I'm talking to chief people officers or talent officers, but you're an administration officer. So talk to me a little bit about how you think about the topic of people at work and how you partner with your HR team or your people team.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, because this is a topic I rarely get asked about. And it's one that is so important when you think about large brands and the most successful brands globally. It is ones where corporate affairs and communication specifically is in lockstep with the people and places team. And me and the chief human resources officer are always like BFFs because we're in the trenches together all the time. You know, and in particularly when companies are going through transformations. We just brought in a new CEO and almost an entirely new leadership team with the exception of 2 individuals. And so that already is a massive transformation before you even get to the broad employee base. And so having that leadership and that coordination with the CHRO is critical. We're rolling out new values, new value prop for consumers. So really making sure all of our stakeholders are bought into this new strategy and kind of new way of doing business.
I love this so much because what you're talking about is, you know, the ins and outs of a business, but also how it impacts the people.
That's right.
And so this partnership between your team and the people and places team, right, is such a critical one to not only make sure that you get right, but that you have some level of consistency of not freaking everybody out, but saying we're going to come along the journey with you.
That's exactly right. So of course, the people and places team, their primary responsibility is the employee base, but it's a bit of a misnomer that they're the only ones that are primarily responsible for employees. I would say that it is a shared responsibility. When we think about the information our employees are consuming each and every day, that content is coming from my team. And so we need to make sure that those 2 responsibilities and ultimately goals are married up.
You have just made every people leader a happy person by saying caring for the people in an organization is a shared responsibility. So thank you. Let's make sure that we have that snippet posted everywhere.
I love it. I love it.
So let's get into some more questions. And I want to talk to you about the biggest misconception from your standpoint that other folks have, be it other members of the business, other leaders, or even outside of your company, the misconceptions that folks have about HR and what the job of HR is or what HR teams are there to do.
Yeah, I would say the biggest misconception is that HR functions need to be cautiously transparent, which is a made up term that I just that I just stated right now. But I think, you know, again, particularly with companies that are going through transformation, it is so important that the employees see leadership and see the ultimate people strategy as one that is both authentic and transparent. And of course, you need to be thoughtful about when, you know, you cascade information and what that information is. But employees know when their leaders are being transparent, when they're being authentic, particularly in the age of AI, which my team is heavily leveraging, and there's so many efficiencies, but making sure you have that human authentic tone is critical. And that's something that I hope all brands are thinking about right now.
So what I love so much about your answer is that personally, I connect with it in that you mentioned transparency. You mentioned thoughtfulness. And I think there's a huge difference between being careful and being thoughtful, right? Careful is thinking about all the don'ts first.
That's right.
And thoughtful is thinking about what is the outcome that we want? And then how do we get there in the best way possible?
That's exactly right.
So I think that's so important. And then I think also coming from Workhuman, you know, this concept of how do you make sure that humans stay in the loop, right? There will always be roles for people. And how do we make sure that we're thinking about those alongside of the what can AI do for us?
That's exactly right.
Awesome. So let's talk about one workplace norm that you believe is outdated.
Ooh, this is a good one. One workplace norm that I think is outdated. I would say, this is a good one. There's always going to be a human element to HR, to communications, and to pretty much every function. But certainly, from an operational perspective, the way things always were done, when you think about coding, technology, all of those things have been flipped on their head now in this era of AI.
Absolutely.
And, you have some companies that are more resistant, some that are seeing the benefits and are leaning in, and doing so in a thoughtful way is super important, but not being late to the game is going to be critical. And I really believe when you look even 2 to 3 years from now, the companies that have embraced AI are going to be the ones that are thriving. And when you think about the role of HR and people leaders, the need to upskill and to not only, express the importance of that to employees, but to build their confidence around it. A year ago, I remember having those conversations with my team when we were rolling out all these tools, and the anxiety around, is this going to replace my job, was real. And now fast forward a year, I haven't been asked that question once, because they now see the benefits of, oh, wait, I'm only spending 10 minutes on an org announcement rather than 2 hours on an org announcement because of AI. And now I can actually spend more time with, our head of HR being thoughtful and strategic about what's ahead, values rollout, other kind of mission-driven initiatives. And so it's just shifting their capacity and their time, but it does require an upskilling. And so that's something that I know is top of mind for our People and Places team. And I would expect that it's also top of mind for others.
Yes. And I think too, the piece of this upskilling conversation, right? Because there's always been conversations about org transformation and, who do we need to bring up to speed? I think this conversation is different because it touches everyone, especially the folks at the top.
That's right.
Because if they don't get it, they won't know how to talk about it in a way that reads as authentic. And then it's very easy for your population to misinterpret, well, what do you mean by this? What are we actually onboarding these tools to do? And meeting that resistance is going to be the biggest hurdle to get over, to say we're one of those companies that says AI.
And by the way, it's such a natural opportunity to show your authenticity, because there's few that can claim they're experts in this space. And even myself a year ago, I would say scratch the surface, right? And so people have said, how has your team adopted so quickly to this shift? And it literally took something as simple as hosting an offsite where I flew in all 100 members of my team globally. So our 2 individuals in China, 1 in Germany, multiple in the UK, they had never even met before. Wow. Bringing them together, not only to help foster, a strong culture, but importantly, we spent a half day and I flew in our head of AI and just, tools and capabilities for internally and how we're rolling that up. Flew him in to sit there and do a demo with the team, because it really took that, even for myself, to get comfortable using it and to see the immediate benefits. And then fast forward end of the year, just won a pair of sneakers at our senior leaders offsite because my team was top 5 in AI capability usage.
All right, we're going to high five for that one.
Oh yeah. So anyway, it really takes, sitting side by side with your people, with the employee base. So just to kind of break the ice on hey, this doesn't have to be scary. And in fact, this can really be helpful to you in your job.
Yes. And I love the example that you give of bringing people together and then having a demo, right? And I think about this from the perspective of being customer zero in my own org, and seeing the demos that our product team has both helps my team to understand, okay, if this is the purpose of this tool, here's how we might implement it. And we can then get smarter about the feedback that we're giving, but also for everybody else in the company to understand this is what it looks like to have AI embedded in your product. It's not meant to necessarily replace a human. It's meant to get you the information faster
incremental,
so that you can do better.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of in HR, if there's this big evolution, people are talking about AI transformation and it starts with the people. What do you think is a role or a new skill or ability that will need to exist in HR that maybe didn't 5 years ago?
It is this upskilling. I mean, so it existed 5 years ago, but it looked very different and it was not a priority as it is today.
Yep.
This is a real shift in skills, in expectations. What do we expect of our employees? We expect you to work differently than you did before. And by the way, collaboration has never been more important, because we're all doing our jobs slightly differently. Being able to share what's working and what's not, trying something new and what the outcome of that was is different. And it's exciting if you're embracing it, but it does require a very big role for HR in looking at across the company, what skills do we need that we don't have today?
Yep.
What jobs may change? We had to change some job architecture because it just looks different today than it did a year ago, and that's okay. But doing the work and kind of, I call it like a bit of an audit, taking an audit of where do we have gaps and how do we fill those? Where do we have roles that need to evolve to be a little bit different today than they were yesterday is a lot of work.
Yes. And I think it was talked about on the panel that you were in earlier, this idea of resiliency. And what I might add to that is agility.
Yes.
Right. And so it's just the sense of, especially as HR practitioners, sitting in the space of we need to build a resilient organization that can be as agile as possible, because the change to the org chart or the job architecture is going to just come faster and faster.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to feel okay with the change that comes, knowing that we'll figure it out.
And by the way, when you think about brands that are consumer facing like ours in PayPal and Venmo, consumers are trying to figure this out. So we always talk about this notion of working customer back, starting in the customer's shoes and then working back so that we're adapting and delivering capabilities that the customer wants. If our employees aren't knowledgeable or excited about AI, how can our consumers get excited about AI?
Right.
And so for us, it's one of these things that it's so critical that all of our stakeholders, one, know the importance of trust, because trust has to be front and center as you're adopting AI. And particularly when you're rolling out, new products and services to consumers, they need to know that the trust in PayPal and in the brand is still there, even though the way they might be shopping looks very different.
Right. And the importance of trust, I think, as you point out really nicely, it fits everywhere, right? Trust for your customers to have in the brand, trust for your people to have in the employee value proposition, but in what is the company doing and how will they let me know the purpose of these things and how I can be useful alongside this new technological growth. So if we jump into this next question, I'm interested in understanding how you think about leading when it's maybe not always the easiest thing to do, or the right thing is maybe not as clear, or seems like it's going to take a bit longer, or it's going to be a bit tougher.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, it's just being authentic and making sure your team knows that regardless of where we are or where we're going, or challenges that might exist right now, one, I'm approachable and I'm here to share an experience in the overcoming those challenges as they are. But two, that when things are tough, I want to be the first person that my team sees who's either helping them break down barriers, making tough decisions if there's a bit of a standstill, and ultimately, being that authentic leader that I've always expected my managers to be, my leadership to be. Especially when times are tough, you want to have a face that you trust, that is being authentic, and that is being transparent and above board with you.
Yes. And you just said the third keyword in my set of personal values. So authenticity, transparency, and what I would probably add to that, and ties into something you were saying earlier, is also humility.
That's exactly right. And people can see through it. So when you're not authentic and when you're not demonstrating that empathy, they are going to question decisions anyway, right? Because they can tell that, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting the full story here. Right. Or is there something that's missing that, could be that last puzzle to, piece to the puzzle that would make the picture look a little bit more complete.
Yes. Yes.